In this recording, we're going to look at how you get feed banks that you've been using in Pro over into your nutrition farms, and also how you get them into Feeds Manager. The process that you use to do this depends on what your company looks like and how you intend to use this. In Pro, for years, we advised users to create a feed bank farm that they just populated with feeds, that they edited in the farm because you could only edit feed values in a farm, changing prices, changing nutrient values, then added them to a common feed bank that they then were able to pull feeds and mixes, even diets that had been turned into a mix, over into other pro farms and thus easily populate their farm feed banks so that they could just get on with balancing for a farm. Typically, most nutritionists use the same sets of feeds over and over again. So it always made sense to have a feed bank farm that you did all your pricing work in and reconcile your own personal feed bank, then bring those feeds into your new farms. It was a pretty slick way. With the new program that we're moving to, nutrition, it won't quite work that way because we're pushing information up into the cloud. And as we've been explaining, each feed has a unique identifier. Call it a UPC code for the feed. Technically, it's called a GUID. So each feed on each farm has a unique GUID, and that allows it to be identified in the database for that farm in the cloud so that it gives some continuity and better ability to follow the feed characteristics through. This kind of messes with the idea of using a feed bank to reconcile your farm feeds because each feed on each farm is unique. So you won't be able to just reconcile the feed bank farm and then have that reconcile on your farm. You have to use our new program, Feeds Manager, to accomplish that. Feeds Manager is the next generation of Feedbank Manager, and it was created initially to replace the Feedbank Manager program for our users who were already using that. In doing so, as we built it out, we realized this program could be useful to single users, small groups that don't need the mill formulation handshake software part of it. So we scaled back Feeds Manager and made it so that it easily creates reconcilable feed banks that you can then use with your nutrition program. We have some videos on that show you how to use it. The point of my video this day is to show you the ways to get your feed banks that you had in Pro over into nutrition. And there are several ways of doing it. So the first one that I'm going to show you is working with that feed bank farm that you had. So I'm going to open up my feed bank farm. And so I have a feed bank farm that I call Common Feeds and Mixes. There are two ways to take a feed bank in Pro to nutrition. This is one of the ways. This does not build a reconcilable feed bank for you because this is just using the programs of Pro and Nutrition. This is not using the added Feeds Manager. So like most feed bank farms, I did not do anything other than create feeds in this farm. I have no barns and lots. I have no cattle. And in order to get feeds over into nutrition, they have to be fed to a group. So in this feed bank farm, I need to first create a barn and lot. I'm just going to go with defaults because I want to do this quickly. And this is true for you. You don't need to have real values in here. I have my feeds. And as you can see, it's a combination of just single ingredients and mixes. I need to create a recipe so that I can convert this into a nutrition farm. Now remember, when you're converting a nutrition farm, ingredients must be in a recipe in a Pro farm in order to convert into nutrition. So I am just going to send all of these over So I have a massive list of fed feeds, but it fits my criteria of it has to be in a diet in order to convert. So I'll come up to Tools, Convert Farm to Nutrition Format. It might take a little while because there are so many feeds. It shows me that I don't have any feeds that won't reconcile. They're all in our feed dictionary. And I'm going to select that one group and I'm going to convert it to a nutrition farm. Okay. So once I have that converted, and ideally, when you're converting a pro farm to a nutrition farm, you should have nutrition closed because in the process of opening, nutrition checks your license, checks your feed banks available, and checks to see if you have any converted farms. If you have it open, it doesn't do that check. So I'm going to close it and reopen it. So now you can see that in reopening my program, it noted that I had a converted farm and it put that in my recent farms file. So I'm going to open that. As it opens, it's going to ask me to assign it to a street address. As all farms in nutrition have to have a unique street address, it doesn't have to be a true street address, it just has to be there. Anything with an asterisk is required. And I'm going to assign this feed bank to a mill. Now, once I do this drop down, you're going to see that the company I'm working in, which is a fake company, has a lot of mills. And I use this to illustrate how you use mills both as feed sorters and people sorters. Since I'm in my people sorter mode, I'm going to assign these feeds, which are my common feeds, to one of my people sorter mills. And I'm going to assign it to the Castle Bar Mill, and I'll accept that. Okay, so now I have all of this stuff that I converted, and most importantly, my feeds listed here in this farm. If I wanted to continue on as I was doing with my technique that I used in Pro to have a feed bank that I pulled feeds out of, but remember, I'm not going to change prices or characteristics of the feed in this feed bank because they won't reconcile anymore. But if I just wanted a annotated list of feeds rather than looking at the big AMTS list, or maybe I've named things the way I like them named, I can go ahead and make a feed bank from this. So I would do create feed bank, and this I'm just going to name it the same thing I had before. And then I transfer all the feeds into it. Takes a little while because there's a lot of feeds. Okay, so now I have a feed bank that says common feeds and mixes, and all of those feeds that I previously had as a feed bank in Pro are now a feed bank here in Nutrition. I have to treat them a little differently if I was using them to reconcile, but I have my common feed bank. This is a way to transfer feed banks that you just like to choose from. It's not creating a reconcilable feed bank. Okay, so let's go to the next way, using Feeds Manager to create a feed bank from Pro. So I'm going to close my nutrition and I'm going to open a different farm because in the next process that I'm going to show you, it really works best when you only have feeds, no mixes. The reason being that you may get duplication of ingredients added to your feed bank when you import it into Feeds Manager, because there may be feeds inside your mixes that are the same as the feeds in your feed bank, and it may assign them as a separate feed with a GUID when it's actually the same feed from your feed bank. We are advising that you do it with feed ingredients only, not necessarily with mixes, but you can do it with mixes. It will work. It just, you may have to do a little bit of editing once you get it up into Feeds Manager. So in this case, let's look at this list of feeds. And here I have some feed banks. I'm going to check and see if I have any mixes because I don't want to convert any mixes. And I do. So I'm actually going to delete these mixes from this particular feed bank. And so here's my list of feeds, and I want to turn them into a reconcilable feed bank that I can then go ahead and put pricing in. I can update feeds. I can do all the things and make it easier for me to formulate in my nutrition program by readily bringing in feeds from this feed bank and having them update. So to do that, I go up here and I create a file for export to Feeds Manager. This file is created successfully. So now I log into my SSO in the same company and I go to my Feeds Manager program. I want to import feed ingredients from AMTS software. So I click on this, and then I need to determine what mill I want to put it in. And again, I told you that this company has people sorter mills and feed sorter mills. And I'm going to put this into one of my feed sorter mills. So I'm going to put this in the cabin mill. I can either drag and drop or I can click here. I'm going to click because I'm going to show you where I'm looking for these. So these are in my documents, AMTS, AMTS Cattle Pro, and it is called Feed Exports. And so this one is, I have to remember, Feeds from Feeds Farm. So there we go. Then I'm going to upload those. The process when you upload something from AMTS software is you choose the feed bank that you want to put it in. You can put it in multiple feed banks. Let's say that you wanted to make this a list of common feeds that comes from multiple mills that you work with where the pricing might be different. You can upload this and put it in multiple mills and then go in and edit the values to suit the particular mill. But I'm just going to import it in this one mill. One of the things that it's doing when it imports is it's pulling in the feed bank information and it's going to create a feed bank for me that will have all these feeds in it, and I'll be able to just do a few edits to that feed bank. I won't have to pull feeds into a feed bank. I'll be able to do a few edits to the feed bank in the feed library, then send that out as a feed bank to my users. Feed banks from Feeds Manager support both nutrition users and pro users. So this would be a way to make a reconcilable feed bank that will work in your pro farms and allow you to bring in feeds that will reconcile by price. So I'm going to go ahead and check all of these. I want to import all of them. I'm going to load the feeds and preview. So it was checking to see if I had these feeds already in my Dinty Company feeds, and I didn't. So I'm going to confirm my addition or update. One of the things that we have as a checkbox here is if I were importing mixes and I only wanted mixes in the feed bank, not the mix components, the mix ingredients, I would check this. And then the only thing that you would see in the feed bank would be the mix, not the mix plus the ingredients. But I don't need to do that on this because I don't have any mixes in this. And now I'm going to go to my company feeds. I am going to choose, remember I put those in the cabin mill. Now I can easily go through and edit these feeds to add pricing on them, to change any nutrient values, to add any comments, to change names. I can do all of that in Feeds Manager. If I want it to reconcile, and I do, if I'm sending these out as reconcilable feed banks, it has to be locked. So I can go through and lock each one, and you see a confirmation down there with the little swirl and the check, or up here on these three buttons, I can make them all locked. And so that locks all of the feeds in this feed bank. Well, some of these feeds in the feed bank don't make sense to be locked. They're template feeds. So I don't really want my forages coming in locked. So I'm going to go ahead and unlock those. In fact, I'm just going to sort by grain type forages, make sure that I capture all of those. So I've got some corn silage that I want to unlock. And also, I could do this. I could make all of these unlocked using that. Whatever you have filtered is what these actions will do. The reason that you want these unlocked is you might want to import a feed analysis over top, and you cannot import or change anything in a locked feed except for the price. So we're going to clear that filter. Let's see, what else do we have? Hay crop forages. So I missed one here, so I'll just set that to false. All of the edits that you make in a feed has to be done in this feed library. Then you can go to the feed banks, and you can see that I have feeds from the feeds farm. I can edit this. I can take away feeds. I could, let's see, what can I could remove it from the feed bank at this point, but now I've got my feeds, and you can see that the changes I made to unlock the forages and lock everything else are there. I'm going to call this my common ingredients. And I'm not making it company specific. If I made it company specific, only people within my own company could see this feed bank and take feeds from, or people I invite. The second thing I want to do is make this feed bank available to people who are associated with certain mills. So remember, these are my feed mills, and then these are my people sorting mills. So I'm going to have everyone who belongs to these particular people sorting mills have access to this feed bank. So I click Save, and then if I'm using these feed banks with nutrition, I can publish it. Publishing sends out an API call and lets anybody who has nutrition know that there's a new feed bank and they have access to it. And that is controlled here. So if I look at my Munster Mill people, internal users, they are all given access automatically to that feed bank of common ingredients. And I'll just show you on my other mills. We have internal users and we also have external users. If you wanted to add somebody who was an external user to this common ingredients feed bank, you just would check their name. The way that you add an external user is you put their email in and you put their name, but you don't have to put their name in. And that will add them as an external user. They then can have access to a feed bank. You will have to check them. Internal users, if on your company admin side you've decided to automatically share privileges to all common mill users, then it'll automatically share the feed bank privileges. External users, you will have to check them. So now that I have done that, let's say I wanted to support a pro user with this same feed bank, I would export the pro feed bank. So this is my common ingredients, and I would download this file and put it in my pro feedbanks folder. Then I would have a reconciling feedbank from Feeds Manager that I could then use in both pro and nutrition users. So how does that look in nutrition? If I come back here and open nutrition, I'm going to open a different farm. The thing that I'm going to do to check for my feed banks is I'm going to the My Feedbanks folder, and I have an icon that says Download Feedbank. And it tells me that I have a feed bank available to me that I don't already have in my Feedbanks folder. So once I download that, any changes that is made to that feed bank, now I have it available to choose from. Any feed that I want to choose from here. So I can bring a feed into my farm and it will be a reconcilable feed. So let's just show, if I bring that in, and let's go with our forage and I accept those additions. If I tried to edit that, the only place I can make changes are the price and the corn silage. If I wanted to make any changes there, I can import. You can tell whether you can edit it or not because it'll show the difference column here. So those are the two ways to get feed banks from your Pro program into your nutrition program.